Hello, everyone, and welcome to our InPower Coffee Break. It's time to tap your personal power and pull up a cup for this episode of InPower Coffee Break. I'm Mary Brody with InPower Coaching, and today our guest is Sharon Miller, and we're going to have a conversation about managing your own career. And what I really think is unique about this session is that we'll be talking to someone who has done what the coaches tell us to do all the time, right? And it's always great to hear someone's direct experience with it and how they were now able to navigate around like the systems and the this and that and able to guide their own life. And again, we hear this from coaches a lot. We'll have a lot of coaches on the show, but now we have someone who's actually done it. So this is like why I get really excited about this episode, is we're going to get real life advice. So if you're live on the video and want to jump in on the conversation, just leave us a note in the chat box and we'll bring you in. And just so you also know, we hold these coffee breaks live every Tuesday at noon Eastern to explore InPower topics and strategies that will help you achieve work-life satisfaction and lead in a pro-human workplace. So join us live, watch and listen to past recordings at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes at InPower Coffee Break. So now I'm going to introduce Sharon Miller. Sharon is a Silicon Valley marketer with over 15 years in the technology sector. As a marketing generalist, she has worked in a variety of corporate marketing functions. Throughout her career, Sharon has been through an acquisition by HP while at 3PAR and an IPO while at Data Domain, both data storage companies. Starting her marketing career at the French software company ACI, Sharon combined her love of the French language with her passion for marketing. Foundationally, Sharon's interest lies in her education and understanding of sociology, bringing a humanistic approach to the workplace with a strong sense of teamwork, fostering productivity amongst her peers, and building relationships across the organization at all levels. Sharon holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of California, Santa Cruz. And I want to say, welcome, Sharon. I am so excited that you're here today to talk to us because I think you bring so much to this conversation. Again, it's one thing to hear the coaches talk about it. It's another thing to hear about someone who does it, and you do it so well. I always admire how the relationships you have managed to build with people who sometimes can be so challenging. I always just watch and learn from you every conversation and what you've done.
Well, thank you, Mary. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the invitation, and I hope I'm able to impart some of my knowledge on your listeners.
Oh, I'm sure. Again, every conversation I learn something new.
Nothing short of a pleasure working with you, and thank you for that. When one just goes into the workplace and they're just doing their job, it's nice to hear that folks are watching and listening and appreciating what they see amongst their colleagues. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having the time today. So I think maybe to kick it off, Sharon, I gave the bio, right? But why don't you give me a little background on your career, like where you started and how you moved around?
Sure. So as you stated, I did start my marketing career in Silicon Valley at a French software company called ACI. They developed back in the day, dating myself a bit here, a relational database called 4D. So they were an Apple developer during the Guy Kawasaki days, and he was a really big evangelist for it, which really helped promote the success of the company. So as mentioned in the bio, I did study French all through high school and college, and I thought my dream job would be to combine my love of the French language with my interest in business and marketing. So during my time there, I worked with a private French tutor to learn business French. That was one area that did not come out of my studies as an undergrad. So it was fascinating. I was living in two worlds, so to speak.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when you were at ACI, right, and then when did you find it was time to make a transition? What did you start to notice in your career to make the next leap, so to speak?
Sure. So after a little over 2 years at ACI, I determined it was time to move on. Is one typically finds that they've learned all that they can, in an organization, as well as looking at the growth potential. One might learn their job and be ready to take the next leap, and they want to stay in an organization. However, the organization may not be able to support that. So I felt that I needed to be in a place that would allow me to continue to grow. While I loved the company, I just needed to move on so that I could continue to grow forth in my career. Tailing on to that, so my old manager, here's where I'm tapping in now to networking, and I know we'll elaborate on that further.
Right.
But my old manager at ECI, so if I may say, I'm bringing it early into the conversation because it started early in my career. As far as tapping into my network, and my old manager recruited me to come over to Verity. So this was back in the day, again, in the early 90s, a search and information management company. And so this was about a year or so before Google came on the scene, which was a really exciting time, of course, in the Valley and around the startup time. And I really loved my job there. I really had, I grew my depth and breadth of understanding in marketing. It was very hands-on, and I think, Mary, having worked with me in the past, I'm definitely a hands-on, roll up my sleeves kind of gal. And so while there, not only did I love my job, I continued to build up my professional network. So not only did my network start early on in my career, but I knew then, even at that next move, that I needed to start building that network as I continued to move and grow.
Awesome. And so I'm looking at different things for us to talk about. I know you've been covering so much awesome stuff. So let's talk about the professional relationships, because I think you've had that also throughout your career. And I don't know if you want to give a couple of other examples of that, and how you've kind of seen these different relationships build and get you to that next step.
Exactly. So interesting enough, so not only did my professional network get me from ACI to Verity, after Verity, my professional, my network opportunities led me as well to my first startup. I say my first startup because obviously it wasn't my last. And again, this was a time in the Valley where folks were just jumping around like crazy. So my first startup, was an opportunity for me to continue to branch out and experience this new wave of startups in the Valley. Super exciting time to be in marketing. So the company, which I can state because it's definitely old news, and now it'll sound like old technology, was called Weave Technologies, and they developed a moving digital imagery within a picture frame. What a concept. So while we're used to seeing digital imagery on computers and multiple devices, and yes, we did have cell phones back then, they thought it would be cool if they could just promote it through picture frames. And so grandma and grandpa can look at the grandkids, on it through a picture frame, switch those out, moving slideshow, vertically, horizontally, what have you. So that was, I know it sounds like lollipops are cool candy, aren't they? But it was part of my story, and I thought I would just kind of share that.
Yeah.
Because even though it was, funky dunky, my network enabled me to go someplace new that I may not otherwise have tried. And I felt like I was early enough in my career where I could start making those changes. So while the company and the experience was short-lived, it was a great opportunity to be part of something new and innovative. Granted, market conditions made it a challenge, and the company's burn rate. And that's another thing that one monitors and learns more about in the startup world. So this was a mix of, utilizing my network, but also being able to continue to grow and expand in my career. So I still look at it as, a good experience, and I'm glad I did it.
Well, yeah, and it sounds like you also picked up along the way too, looking at the company's health, right? Especially with startups at that time, like you're talking, like it was like the boom. Because I seem to remember what you're talking about, the gadget of you have this frame and you can look at all the pictures through it. And that's a really cute detour. It's really, that's a cute company to go to.
Yeah.
And hearing that though, like you said, like the burn rate, because that's what to mention that, it's almost like to learn what, like, so if I had to ask you, like, when you, like, what you've learned with companies, because I know you have other companies you've been at through referrals, right? You have a number of referrals, a number of navigations, or just leveraging your network and kind of, as I term it, like squirreling around, right? And you navigate around. What would you say that indicates to you it's time to move on? Like, you can use your network, but what in a company that's happening, or what with you, like you already mentioned, oh, I'm finding out that I've learned everything I could. It's time to move on, right? Love the company, love this. It's time to move on. If the company's in ill health, would you say that's another factor, or you say there's other factors of things you look at?
I'm glad you asked that, because when one determines it's time to move on, it's not necessarily even just the individual alone determining they want to either switch their career, maybe completely, switch companies, but stay in the same market segment. One has to look at the overall health of the company and what's going on. Dating myself again, but back in the day, there was a book called Who Moved My Cheese, right?
Oh, yeah.
And this is the book.
That's a great book.
In fact, a dear friend of ours still has my copy. But anyway, we'll follow up with a different private coffee talk on that. But the book Who Moved My Cheese basically takes a very personal approach to one's understanding of how they react in the workplace. Right? You can be somebody that's sitting in your cube, doing your job, loving your job, but not being aware of what's going on around you other than the day-to-day contact of your colleagues and the folks you work with directly. Then there are others who are sitting in the cube and starting to hear rumblings about the bigger picture and what might be forthcoming, and what's happening immediately in front of them, and sharing those changes with others. Then there are others who sit in their cube and go to what I call the outer circle, looking big, looking up. What's going on at the executive level? How is that mapped to what you're hearing in the news? What's going on? So while oftentimes folks outside of your organization hear things and get a different spin, if you will, than what we hear internally, it's paying attention and trying to connect the dots in your own way, as well as speaking with your colleagues about what might be happening overall. And so I'm one of those folks that look really big picture, as you know, having worked with me. And then if I'm not understanding what might exactly be going on, I definitely work with and connect with colleagues who, once you go to your circle and your network, even within the company, you get a really good understanding of what could possibly be coming. And there are folks, when change comes, are very, risk averse. Oh no, I don't know what I'm going to wait till they come and tap me on the shoulder and tell me it's time to leave and shut the door. There are others that are going to go, no way. I am not waiting for them to come and tap me on the shoulder to shut the door. And then there are others who are like, I see what's happening. This is probably going to go down within a quarter or so. Maybe I just need to be prepared. So definitely, I have that marriage between knowing when I feel my time is up at a company, even if I'm still enjoying what I'm doing, looking for my potential next move. Do I have a networking opportunity to take me to my next move? And looking at both market conditions and the company's overall health. Did that sort of get to in my decision making process?
Yes. Now, how do you determine your next move? Because I think there was, I find your story from your time within HP to be a fantastic story of how you navigated through the organization and went from not just like business units to corporate to another group of corporate, another like whole different area, and then came back. How do you know what opportunity to do next? How does that kind of work? Because I also know and now you're even shifting. We've talked a bit about how you've also shifted even your LinkedIn profile a little bit so you can get a different type of opportunity. And you seem to instinctively know what this next opportunity needs to look like. You don't necessarily have to say the exact title or the exact this, but you know what this needs to look like, and you get it and you succeed at, and then you go to your next, you find a way to get to your like end goal results. So I don't know if you want to have any thoughts, you want to share an advice on that.
Sure. And, mine's going to relate to the data storage market, because a lot of my next moves and my determination all were aligned to wanting to stay in the data storage market when I saw the trend. So I looked back at the trend, to tail on to what I was looking at, larger market conditions of corporate health. So when I first identified my desire to stay in the data storage market, I went to another small startup called Rhapsody Networks, which was later acquired by Brocade. Rhapsody's gone, Brocade's still here, and job trends in the Valley, that, again, this was a safe thing to do. This was an exciting thing to do because startups were popping up everywhere, and folks were jumping ship with an eagerness to try the next new thing, and of course, wanting to hit it big. So I also felt that in wanting to grow my career within the data storage market, still being at a lower level in the marketing ranks, I wanted to set my sights on a large, iconic Silicon Valley company, Cisco. And, so I'd been at small to mid-sized organizations. Yeah, I was a bit trepidatious to go into a large global marketing organization. So I decided in my decision-making process to go in as a contractor. Very different approach here. Because while I had always had staffed roles, I felt like when you're taking a new step, and this might help some of your listeners as well, where there may be something that you want to try, but you're afraid to dive completely off the deep end, start in the shallow end. Put your foot in the water. Contract. They're looking at you. You're looking at them. It's a win-win. So, and for me, that role met multiple goals. So I had job flexibility at the time, which I needed in my personal life, and many continue to contract throughout their career for that very same reason, whether through an entrepreneurial stance or through contracting. I also loved being in a large global marketing organization. It was really exciting, very different from the startup world, where things were very where I'm used to rolling up my sleeves and doing everything. Oh, I had somebody that could help me with collateral. I had somebody that could help me with web. I had, somebody with AR and PR. Now, on the one hand, I love being a generalist and doing all of that. On the other hand, it was a little bit like I had to get used to being able to let go of my piece of the project and pass it off to another part of the organization. And so when I landed on the data center team, which is where I wanted to be, so I could stay in the growing data storage market, of course. So I feel like this is an example of not only identifying my career goals, identifying the market in which I want to stay, and sticking with it and following it through. I don't know if that helps a little bit to where it brought me to some of my decision making. Did that answer your question in terms of? And then as far as the relationship, what role professional relationships have played in that, I think that, as you can see, this has been a red thread throughout my career. It led me to companies I may not have ever considered, i.e. my picture frame company, and even
right.
and even Rhapsody Networks, which is a very small data storage company, which I knew probably would get eaten up by one of the big guys, But professional relationships truly do lead to an expanding network, and one has to look at it both in your immediate circle and your outer circle, because it could lead you to people and organizations that you might not have otherwise ever, that might not have ever had the opportunity to cross paths with you. So, for example, in all relationships, the professional relationships you have to be a two-way street. So I can meet you 5 years ago, we work a little bit, we go away, you're somewhere out there in my network. And yes, maybe you'll get my annual Christmas card, but I try, and that's oftentimes, that's, how relationships work. That's why we call it an inner nucleus and an outer nucleus. But for me, I like, this is tapping into my humanistic approach, it's a two-way street and they need to be nurtured. Both your internal, within your organization, your colleagues and the professional network you have and build there, as well as outside of your organization.
Okay.
No,
that is That is awesome. So like when it comes time, like when you do go to tap into your network, do you find it to be a more organic process? Do you map out people you want to contact, or do you do a little of each?
I do a little bit of each. I mean, for sure, in my current job search right now, I'm mapping out who, because I want to stay in enterprise technology. I'm looking at specific folks, not only whom I've worked with, but folks that know other people within their networks that are also have an enterprise technology background in their marketing, in the marketing realm. So, of course, there are folks that find me on LinkedIn too that have touched pieces of my career that I have touched. A lot of event folks, for example, are tapping into me. So while I may not want to necessarily go back and be an event manager, these are people that I think could lead me to, to open doors into a company that they're at that I may want to join. So I try to look, I don't look just at what the title and just at what they do. I do a little bit deeper to see, this is interesting. Let me see if this person might have a contact for me. Or, hey, let me go check out that company. I'm not familiar with it. When I see what they do, I'll circle back and tap into that person. So it's both organic, certainly from folks I know. Sometimes I'm just putting stuff out there and looking and see what sticks. And other times I'm just definitely building out and working directly with the folks that I know. I truly feel that, fostering these relationships is important to one's success, and, it kind of gets back to the whole notion of if people can collaborate and work well on teams internally, that's going to translate out into your network in the marketplace, as you go and look for your next gig, if you will. So, whether managing a team or you're an individual contributor, it all comes down to, people will want to be in your network, and you'll have an easier time expanding your network if you treat others with respect and kindness. It's just as important, if not more so, than the skills you bring to the table. A team success, which means your success, is contingent on mutual respect and collaboration. Well, that sounds very professorial and very easy. I think many folks can show examples in their own lives of where they felt that where they loved the project and they believed in the success, that may have had a hiccup or two, because sometimes, you don't always have that mutual vibe and respect going within the team.
Well, yeah, because you're raising something. I think you mentioned it, but I just want to add a little more emphasis to it, because I think sometimes when we do job searches, we think about it's kind of like the what you do, right? And you have all these skills, and then these are the things that we achieved. But there really is more than that, because it's how do you interact with the team. And I know we've talked about this, when you go to get a job, sometimes you can have all the skill sets in the world. If you don't get along with the people you'd be working with, that's it. The game's done.
That's exactly right. And it's interesting, if I may parlay onto that, is and I'm sure many of your listeners can relate to this, when you're telling folks that you're looking for a job and you have an interview, and the first question they ask you is, how did it go? Well, that's that could be both subjective and objective, right? Objectively speaking, you would really have to, take a step out and go, well, there were a few questions that I, could have done better on, or wow, I didn't expect those type of questions, or, but otherwise I think I connected well, I answered them all. That's a very transactional response. They're responding to how the interview went based on the knowledge they felt that they imparted to the interviewer, that showing them that they could do the job. Then, to your point, well, you do have the skill set. It's by the time they speak to you, they already pretty much know you have the skill set, which is why they're looking at you. It's the conversation, whether it's with the recruiter, the interviewer, even the second interviewer, sometimes even the third. The first two folks you speak to, you just have this connection. It melds. It's a flowing conversation. There's some level, there's something that inspiring both of you to keep moving on, and for that person to keep moving you through the process. You could get to that third person, and they know that you've already met with a few other people. They know you've got the skill set. Sometimes it's like, conversations you've got to, it's like pulling teeth, right? Where you're trying to continue and have a conversation about your interest and how you can, what you can bring to the table. If that's, on the other end, we can't force how people respond or ask or converse, and it can be a challenge. And so that overshadows then the skill set that you and your eagerness and drive to want to be at that company. Some people simply just don't connect. And that is something that's completely out of our control. And even if this is within a professional network and someone has led you to the water and you've drunk it, while you're likely to land the interview, given that it's done through a professional network, you may not necessarily get the job. And that is, and folks think, oh, I was qualified, why didn't I get it? They need to look at the bigger picture. While we may never know why we didn't get a job, oftentimes something to think about is, even if you've answered every question spot on with an interviewer, sometimes it's just tone, it's behavioral, and they're just looking for, and this is even through a phone screen, that before they even bring you in. So they're not even looking at you and your body language. It's simply based on the conversation, And many people are looking, because we work in such a team-oriented environment everywhere. Kids in second grade are learning how to work in teams, right? There's a reason for it,
Right.
And so because it's so important, that is this person going to come in and be able to meld with the team?
Right.
So I don't think it's age. I don't think it's gender. It's personality.
Yeah.
It often comes down to personality.
That's true.
So while you don't have to go to dinner with your colleagues all the time, you do have to work with them. And that's what they're looking for. That's more important.
It's the team, and it sounds like, from what you're saying, you build the relationship. You build the relationship, and it's like you're always networking, right? But you're networking in different ways, I guess. Like when you interact with people at work and doing that collaboration, in a way you're networking. And then you network, because I think sometimes people think networking, you just go to your event and you're done. But from what I'm hearing from you, you go to this event and you network and you have you go to this work thing, you go to work every day, you collaborate, you network. And then you do go to these events, you do go to these other things and expand your network, but you're still always, it's like it's always on. It's just different forms, different styles. And it's all about how would you fit into a team somewhere.
That's right. Your network is always on. Your network is always there with you. Building and fostering relationships within an organization, it can be treated similarly to networking outside of your organization. Absolutely. You have to continue to have those conversations, communicate with your colleagues even after the project's over. That's fostering relationships. So what I like to do when I come into an organization, I learn my role, I navigate the organization and get a lay of the land, and then I start reaching out to folks that I know I'll have to work with. So this is beyond my team. And then I start fostering those relationships in advance of my needing to work with them. Get an idea of what they do. Here's what I do. Here's how we can work together. And then you start that whole collaborative process. And then after the project's over, it doesn't end. It has to continue.
Well, we're running at time. So I just wanted to get from you final thoughts before we wrap up. So I don't know if there's any final thoughts, anything we didn't discuss that you'd like to share, or if there's something you'd like to stress more from what we discussed.
I would, thank you. So in terms of what I think people shouldn't try to do as they're looking for work, if you read a job description and think hands down you can do that job, don't not prepare. You never know what kind of, this is back to our behavioral conversation. You never know what kind of interview you're going to have and where that conversation will lead. I say always be prepared. I treat it as, here comes my next midterm, and getting my head in that interview space without overstressing. And then also finally, Mary, I think folks have to remember that the network is everywhere. The coffee shop, the gym. Tell everyone you meet that you're looking and what you're looking for. You never know who you'll be speaking with. And I call it, we all need our own elevator pitch, right? Be ready to speak about what you do, and be able to pass that on to somebody else that can potentially market for you. And you can't describe who you are and what you do, they won't be able to market for you either. And then lastly, a job search does take time. While I know that's stressful for many folks, it's okay to also change course. You may find in your search that what you thought you wanted isn't really the direction you should be following. Explore, course correct. It's okay. I started, as you said earlier on, I started in one direction and course corrected along the way and reshifted my focus and reflected that on my LinkedIn. And always think about the right job for you and the right fit from a corporate culture standpoint. This is really important as well. You may love what you do, but if you're not vibing and feeling comfortable with the way the corporate culture is, that's going to bother you every single day that you're there. It has to be a marriage. So be honest with yourself. If it doesn't sound right, it probably isn't.
That's awesome. This was great, Sharon. Where can people find you and find more information about you if they're looking?
On my link, there is a link. I do have a LinkedIn profile, and on there should have my Gmail, my personal email. I'm happy to share that Gmail now if I can state it.
Sure.
That would be a way to contact me by email. So it's Sharon, SHARON 735 at gmail.com. I've only recently started using Twitter, but if you can find me on Twitter. I think, Mary, you promoted my Twitter handle. In fact, I'm thinking of changing it. That's another course correction, but that's okay. I think from an immediate for the immediate response, I'm happy to have folks also connect with me or find me on LinkedIn. Let them know that they may have heard me on this podcast with you, and I'll be more inclined to respond as well. And my LinkedIn is on Sharon Miller. You'll find me on Sharon Miller.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sharon. This was really valuable today. Thank you so much. That's great advice. This was awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I appreciate the time. I hope the folks enjoyed it. I'm happy to answer any questions. And thank you for an engaging conversation. I really enjoyed it as well. Appreciate you inviting me and having me on.
Oh, yeah. And thanks, everyone, for tuning into this episode of InPower Coffee Break. And please visit us at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com to see upcoming topics, past recordings, and learn how you can join us live. So thanks, everyone, and have an InPower day.
You too, Mary. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.